Hi, everybody. This is Ann Patchett at Parnassus Books. Thank you for listening to Parnassus Presents. Your support allows us to keep bringing you fantastic events. So please consider purchasing a copy of tonight's featured book at the link below. We hope you enjoy the event, recorded live from the Parnassus stage.
Hello, everybody. We are going to get started here. My name is RJ Witherow. I'm the events manager here at Parnassus Books. I am so excited to see the most literal definition of a full house here. There are so many of you here today that we're so excited to see, especially with the weather. Everyone has braved the hail and everything else to get here tonight. Today we are here to celebrate Lucy Foley, a New York Times bestselling author, visiting us all the way from London. We're here for the paperback of The Midnight Feast. So we're very excited to have Lucy. JT Ellison was going to join us tonight as the conversation partner. Unfortunately, she is under the weather tonight, but we are super excited because Nashville has so many great authors. So stepping in for JT is going to be Ariel Lawhon, another New York Times bestselling author, here tonight. So join us in welcoming Lucy and Ariel to the stage.
Hello. Thank you for coming out on this rainy night, and I'm sorry you don't get JT. But she has the plague, and we don't want her here. But good news, she sent me all of her interview questions, and this was actually really fun to look at this book through the eyes of another reader. But please help me welcome Lucy Foley tonight.
Thank you so much. Feeling very at home with this weather. I feel like I might have brought it with me. Sorry about that. And thank you so much for doing this, honestly, for stepping in last minute. You're an absolute superstar. So
happy to do it.
Thank you for having us.
Before I jump in with all of my questions, and we will, of course, save time for you to have questions as well, I would like for you to tell those readers here who have not read the book yet a little bit about The Midnight Feast.
Of course. So The Midnight Feast is set at the opening of this very luxurious countryside hotel built on old secrets beside an ancient wood. I like that line from the publishers, so I use it because I think it just perfectly sort of sums it up. And this sort of opening weekend takes place during a heat wave and over the summer solstice. So I would say that tensions and temperatures are rising and some unexpected guests have come to stay. And really, it's about the sort of who owns the countryside, who has the right to the soul of the countryside. The local community are so angry about this hotel, this sort of influx of wealthy Londoners coming down to stay there. I'm not going to discuss, well, I guess we'll get onto this in the questions, but there's some folklore going on there, some sort of folk horror adjacent stuff. Apparently I can't say horror because that freaks people out. It's horror light going on, just a strand of that, we'll say. But anyway, the morning after this sort of opening weekend summer solstice party that they have, a broken body is found on the beach below the cliffs that this sort of hotel's on top of. Who done it? Dun, dun, dun.
So this is your fourth novel, and you have taken us everywhere from the snowy Scottish countryside in The Hunting Party to this luxurious manor now in The Midnight Feast. So what is it about isolated atmospheric settings that draws you as a writer, and how did your visits to the West Country shape this eerie vibe of this new book?
Oh, great question. I think, for me, setting is so important. It's really the thing that kind of sparks the book alive for me. And I think often with these books, they're not all kind of technically closed circle. The Paris apartment takes place in a crowded, kind of buzzing metropolitan city. But there is a kind of isolation, I guess, in all of them. But it's about that specific setting and why the events happen in the way that they do in that particular place. What does that setting bring out in these characters, certainly with the kind of nature settings, as it were. It's almost like kind of nature, red in tooth and claw, bringing out something sort of, I like to say, kind of latent and feral in my characters. Some aspect of themselves that maybe they weren't aware of before they travelled to this place, you know. And with a book like The Hunting Party, they don't have great cell phone reception. They're sort of without their creature comforts, and it puts them in this kind of pressure cooker situation. And the same in a sort of different way in The Midnight Feast. These characters are sort of out of their depth in a different way, I guess.
Do you feel like your settings become characters in and of themselves?
Oh, absolutely. And that very much happened with this book. So the sort of genesis of the idea behind this book was, you can see I didn't have to reach that far for it. A new luxurious countryside hotel opened up like a village over from me, and the local community were really angry about it. And I can say this over here because I think I won't get sued, but it's this it's this hotel called The Pig, and the campaign was called Kill the Pig. They had this like online campaign, Kill the Pig, and it was like sort of in-person campaign as well, and it was sort of slightly terrifying, and so that kind of got me thinking. But then I was like, well, I can't set it in Sussex where I live because you know, I've got to muddy the waters a little bit. Like, I'll set it 2 counties over. And no one will ever guess until I say it, you know, at events all over the country, you know. But the West Country, it was a great excuse to set something in the West Country, which I've been wanting to do for a while, because it's this part of the UK that is so rich in ancient history, you know, from kind of Arthurian legend. You've got Stonehenge, you've got Glastonbury. I don't know if anyone knows, like, the big festival, but that also sprung out of Glastonbury itself has this sort of lots of kind of folklore around it. There's this strange mound called Glastonbury Tor with this kind of tall tower on top of it, and apparently if you go into the hillside, there's a portal to the underworld, a secret portal to the underworld in there. So who knew? So it was really a chance to kind of delve deep into all of that, and I think that really informed the sort of strong kind of folkloric strand in the book, and really became like a character in itself.
So you have this new luxury inn, and you've said that you combined it sort of with the Wicker Man style horror. Explain for those of us who do not understand what the Wicker Man is, and how you blend this real place and real events that are happening in your community with this other more, not horror, maybe we'll call it macabre element.
Yeah. Well, the thing about, I'm actually such a wimp. I'm not a big horror film watcher because I get too scared. But there is something about these kind of, I mean, a lot of them are sort of British, kind of from the 70s, like The Wicker Man. There's one called Blood and Satan's Claw, like Witchfinder General. I don't know if anyone's watched. It's quite niche, kind of British folk horror film watching. But also a film more recently like Midsummer, which actually did really freak me out, but I also kind of loved it at the same time. And yeah, it's a very specific genre, I guess, or subgenre of horror where it's sort of, it's kind of rural. It's often kind of interested in tradition and community and sort of local ancient kind of rituals and things. But what I think about that's so clever about Midsummer is that it's set in the present day. So it's sort of, what does that look like in, 2025 or whenever that film was set. So I really kind of wanted to do that with the folklore in this book. I wanted the birds, who are, I don't know if anyone's read it, but they are this sort of sinister presence on the edge of things. I wanted them to have a very specific reason for being there. They needed to have a kind of history. They needed to be sort of rooted in community. And that was actually one of the hardest things about writing this book. I thought, I'd love to have this sort of weird, dark strand that's like, a little bit Wicker Man-y, a bit weird on the edge. That'll be great. I'll just kind of sprinkle that in. And then very quickly I realized that it needed to have a real purpose. I needed to know the sort of centuries of history of the birds, even if I didn't put that all in the book and kind of bore you with it. I needed to know, so I could practically write you a whole other book just on them, kind of lexicon of the birds. I can't remember the rest of the question. I just gone totally off on the birds there.
Oh, no, that was actually...
They have me.
The nightbirds was going to be my next question. So you answered that nicely. And you gave me a good segue into my next question, which is your path to writing is actually really interesting. From what I understand, you were a bookseller, you were a literary agent's assistant, and also a fiction editor. So was this always the path that you wanted to take?
Goodness.
Or
got too excited.
did it meander a little bit?
No, I mean, I never really knew this is something I could do. I just always loved books and loved reading. Very much came to writing from reading. I guess at school I always loved, if there was like a creative writing exercise or something. But beyond school, I hadn't really done a lot of writing. And then I think it was working in the publishing industry in all these different areas, as you say, and just being surrounded by story and people talking about story. And in the publishers that I worked at, you'd go to the editorial meeting and people would be pitching these books that they wanted to commission, and they'd be talking about why certain things worked and why other things didn't, and about plot and structure and character and all of that. So it was like a kind of little mini, I guess, course in writing without kind of realizing it. I think I was sort of internalizing a lot of that. And I was just really inspired. And I think you also, in publishing, you see manuscripts at every stage of the process. So you see them come in as that Word document that actually needs a lot of work. They don't start out as the kind of glossy hardback that you pick off the shelf. And I guess that made it feel less intimidating, more accessible. But it was like this sort of secret side hustle that I had, and I didn't tell anyone I worked with because I would have been so bad. I was so worried about kind of it not working or whatever. And funny enough, so my first book was a historical novel. So I wrote that, and in a weird way, writing The Hunting Party was a bit like going back there again and having this sort of secret side hustle project, because I was meant to be writing a fourth historical, and I was actually secretly writing this like totally different book, this like contemporary thriller that was just the thing that excited me. So
I keep trying to switch from historical to thriller just for the fun of it, and I keep being told to stay in my lane.
Do you know?
So I'm actually really impressed that you were able to just do the thing and say, here it is, let's go.
I think that's the thing. I think you have to, if you tell publishers these things, they start getting very nervous and like, but that's not how we've packaged you. Blah, blah, blah,
what I hear you say is ask forgiveness, not permission.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, do the thing. And
noted.
then, 100%.
Okay, so you have described the Midnight Feast as having a campy, eat the rich edged with characters like the flamboyant Francesca.
Oh my goodness, yes.
What is the most fun you've had writing an unlikable character, and how do you make them compelling for readers?
I mean, it is 100% Francesca. I don't know where she came from. You have sometimes a lot of the characters, I have to live with them for a long time. I have to kind of almost talk to them in my head. That sounds totally mad, but like work out who they are, and kind of gradually build character and get a sense so that I can put that on the page. With Francesca, she just arrived fully formed, very much herself, in all her kind of awfulness and sort of her kind of goopy, I guess. Again, am I going to be sued? I don't know. But, I was sort of fascinated by the idea of this character that kind of wafts around in white linen and waves the sage sticks and is kind of wellness personified, but this very sort of Instagram, like 2025 version of wellness. And, the sort of dark, cynical side of me always wants to know, like, what's really going on, underneath all of that. So the idea of someone that had sort of undergone a fairly hefty personal rebrand, and she just I felt like I heard her voice so clearly in my head. I think because there are examples of that character out there everywhere, and I guess writing her was a chance to kind of really push. It sounds weird to talk about humor in a book that is a thriller, is essentially like quite dark in places, but it was a chance to kind of really push the satire with her, and that sort of that kind of gap between what someone thinks they're presenting and who they really are as the author and the reader. There's a kind of room for humour there. She was just so much fun. Yes, evil fun.
I actually like the terrible characters. I like writing them. The heroes are great, and we root for them, but there's something fun and wicked about spending time alone in your office with just a really terrible person that cannot hurt you.
Totally. I totally agree. Yes,
they can hurt your feelings, but they can't.
There's a catharsis in it, isn't there, as well? It's
yes.
Yes.
Okay, so your novels, including The Midnight Feast, use multiple narrators and timelines, which I personally love because I do that as well. And you do that to build suspense. But how do you juggle all of those perspectives without losing the audience? And do you have a favorite character's voice from this particular book?
Oh my goodness. My process, I would say, is quite chaotic. It's not the most organized. I've made my peace with that now. However many books in it is. It's the only way I can write. I love it. I love kind of jumping around. It's a great cure for writer's block, if anyone's writing, to have multiple characters, multiple points of view, because if you ever don't feel like writing in someone's voice, you can write in someone else's that day. And also don't write chronologically, just jump around, and then you can sort of write whatever scene you feel like writing that day. Although another author did tell me apparently it's like eating the toppings off the pizza first. Apparently I do that in my writing style. But that's the only way I can do it. What it does mean is that the first draft is like play. It's just sort of writing all these scenes, sort of, I guess, throwing all these things around, seeing what happens. And then there's like there's a really big edit. There's a big edit which is kind of trying to fit this huge jigsaw puzzle together and make sure that you've heard enough from each character, that they sort of pass the mic quickly enough, that all the scenes are in the right place, that the sort of timeline fits. All of that for me comes out in the editing process, kind of drafting and sort of refining and polishing.
So I'm guessing you're not a plotter. So I have this theory that there's plotters and there's pantsers. And the pantsers meaning they write by the seat of their pants. Like I have friends that don't have a book idea on Wednesday night, and Thursday morning they start writing, and I think that's chaos. But from what I have observed, if you write by the seat of your pants, if you're pantsers, you have so much more fun. The entire process is delightful, whereas somebody like me plots everything out, researches everything. I know how the entire book is going to end before I begin, and I'm not having fun. Ever. But here's the thing. I also don't have heavy edits. When I finish the first draft, I have a finished book and it's done. Whereas most of my friends who are pantsers, they have lots of revisions and lots of edits. So the theory is you're going to suffer no matter which one you decide. I suffer up front because I have to painstakingly go through everything. And then you suffer on the back end of the story.
Lots of crying in that process.
I do that too.
So much crying. Yeah, and I think it's just, what I did realize though, is I used to say, oh no, I don't plot at all. I don't, I just kind of all comes to me. And actually that's not totally true. I heard the great Lucy Foley, I absolutely love her. I heard her say, I do plot, I just plot as I go along. So it's not like she just turns up to her desk and she has no idea what she's going to write that day. And she's like, I just see where the characters take me. She has an idea of where she's going. And I feel the same. I have the shape of the book, but it's not particularly clear. It's like a kind of map drawn by a child or something. It's not like this beautiful sort of roadmap. So, I'm not ever totally stuck and it's a kind of blank space in front of me. I do, and I have those scenes, I have those set piece scenes, and sometimes I'll write, the ending quite early on and I might go back and change it, but I kind of know where I'm getting to, and that's quite reassuring. But yeah, for me, I have to say, I do find it fun working that way because things surprise you along the way. And also that first draft for me is about learning who my characters are. And I used to think before I wrote that it was really cheesy when authors said things like this, but the characters sometimes start driving the plot and you realize there's a sort of better way of doing things. Or for me, a third of the way into writing all of the thrillers, the whodunit has changed. So I suddenly realised, no, it makes so much more sense if it's that person. And it's this quite sort of creepy feeling, because you're like, oh, this person's been sort of waiting in the wings. It's them. And I'm surprised by it. So hopefully the reader will be too.
I cannot wrap my head around this. My last book was a murder mystery. And before I started writing, I knew who all the characters in the book were. I'm like, I have to know. I have to know, because I have to tell this story what to do. I think of it like my children. You do what I tell you to. And so I listed out every single character in the book whose name was mentioned on the page. And I went through striking out names, and I was trying to find the one person who absolutely could not have done it. Zero chance, couldn't happen, no way this person could be the killer. And I circled that name, and I decided that was the killer, and then I reverse engineered the entire book. Because I figured if I didn't know, then you wouldn't know either.
That sounds so sane. I love it. I just...
But the way yours sounds so scary.
I just feel soothed by hearing you say it. I'm like, next book, I'm going to try that. But I've tried and I can't do it. I can't do it.
I really think that you write the way that you write. And I tell people this all the time. Your process is your process. There is no right way to do it. You do the thing that works. If you can identify a way to get a book done, keep doing that thing and don't try to change it.
Yes.
But I also think you are a plotter or you're a pantser, and you're never going to be the thing that you aren't.
No, absolutely. And the grass always does seem a bit greener on the other side. I was very pleased, though. I did an event with the great David Baldacci the other night, and I was like, this is a proper writer, because I have such imposter syndrome about being a writer. I was like, proper writer who is also a pantser. Who knew? He just starts writing. Yeah. So I was like, I feel vindicated.
I'm so jealous, because I want to have fun. I do know two things are true, whether you're a plotter or a pantser. There are these moments. So there's this moment when you find this story, this premise comes to you, and you think, oh, there it is. Oh my God, there it is. For me, all the little hairs stand up on the back of my neck. And every time I've decided on a book idea, it's because I find this idea, the hairs stand up on my neck, and I go, oh, there it is. And that's the thing that makes me commit 2 years of my life. And then there's the other moment at which I go, oh God, I should not have chosen this job. And this book would be better as cat litter if I shredded it and destroyed it.
Let me ask, is that about 30,000 words? That's where it hits for me. I'm like, oh no, I've committed
closer
a lot.
to 75,000 words. My books are very long, though. Mine are usually like 150,000 words.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I'm curious, though, what was your moment of, oh, yes, there it is with the Midnight Feast, but also your moment of, I picked the wrong job?
Oh my goodness. I mean, there are so many moments. The latter, that happened the whole way through the writing process of all of these books, really. You know, just as I say, lots of crying. But the kind of, oh yes, this idea, that was the hotel plus the setting, plus I think, you know, that Dorset setting, bringing in that kind of folklore element, plus the wellness, plus I think seeing the very first scene that I wrote, which unusually for me is actually pretty much the first scene in the book, other than the kind of prologue, which is Eddie, who is the dishwasher at this hotel. He's this young guy. I forgot to ask the question about who did I love writing the most. So Francesca was fun, but Eddie I loved writing because he's kind of this innocent. He's this 19-year-old farm boy who works at the hotel. He's the kind of lowest rung of the ladder. And he's essentially your kind of eyes and ears into the world of the hotel. And in the very first scene, this rather beautiful woman walks up to the bar and he's just unloading kind of glasses, and he pretends to be a bartender because he's like, I just about know how to make a cocktail. I'm going to like impress her a little bit. And quite quickly gets himself into some fairly hot water by doing that. And that was the other spark. It was like, what's going to happen to Eddie? And that sort of really got me into it because he felt like the first real sort of human element of the book, and he felt really human to me. And he also, so he lives at the farm down the road, and he doesn't tell anyone he works with where he lives, because the guests complain about the smell of manure wafting over them while they lie by the infinity pool, because they want this, they think they want the countryside, but they actually want this very kind of sanitized, Instagram version of it. So
speaking of smell of manure, my dad was a cattle rancher, so he grew up around it. I did not, and he used to tell me, that's the smell of money. And I have never forgotten that, because I think
association.
Well, I think it's true. Livestock are expensive, but they're also profit. Horses are expensive, but that is how I think of manure anytime I smell it, is, oh, that's the smell of money. Your career has had a number of eras. You had your historical era. You are now in your contemporary thriller era, but you have a new era coming up. So as an Agatha Christie superfan, you are now writing the first full-length Miss Marple novel in decades, set to come out in 2026. What is it like stepping into Agatha Christie's world and her shoes? And how do you bring Miss Marple's sharp, intuitive brilliance to life for modern readers?
Oh, great.
This is my favorite question, because I'm obsessed with Agatha Christie.
After I got over it being absolutely terrifying and intimidating, it has just been so much fun to write this book. I'm having the best time with it. It's this huge honor, but it's also... to have a character like that to work with, and then to create this world around her, but just to have this character kind of fully formed, gifted to you. The more time I spend in Marple's world, the more I love her. I think I'm on my third read through of the books now, watching all the TV. It's a great assignment to have to watch all the TV adaptations, because I feel like that's important, because that informs the way people see Marple as well. But she is... It's mad when you think that Christie came up with her in 1930. It's difficult to realise how radical it was, really, to have a sort of elderly woman, a kind of elderly spinster, as your main detective. That was a really kind of... She loved sort of doing new things and breaking the rules like that, and she very much did it with Marple. And what I love about Marple is she's kind of in on the joke. So in the Poirot novels, the humour's often at his expense, unfortunately. It's his funny ways, and his sort of kind of pernickety sort of personality, I guess. With Marple, she knows how people see her. She knows that she's this, she's seen as this sort of elderly, little old spinster in the corner with her fleecy wool and her gossip and her twittering. And she plays up to that, and she uses her invisibility as her superpower. And that still feels as relevant in 2025 as it did, when she first appeared in the 30s. The idea of sort of an older woman being invisible, being underestimated, and then being able to sort of use that to her advantage, because she can kind of go where no one else can. I also love what I love about her, and I don't think I'd really appreciated this when I first read the books, is kind of how dark she is. She has got a much darker view of humanity and human nature than Poirot does, because she's seen it all. She's lived in this little English village, and she's seen sort of everything there is to see of humanity at its best and its worst in this sort of microcosm. And she uses that to kind of apply to the world at large. And I think that's so cleverly done. So, yes. I can talk about it for hours, but hopefully you can tell I'm having so much fun.
Do you think you can draw a straight line, a creative line, between Ms. Marple and Murder, She Wrote? Angela Lansbury.
Absolutely.
Character?
Well, apparently there's this whole... I've got really geeky on this. So there's this brilliant book on Marple, actually, by Mark Aldridge, and it's all about kind of Marple and the adaptations. And part of the reason for Murder, She Wrote appearing was because the studio that made it, they couldn't get Marple. So I think it was like MGM or something, and now I'm just totally making this up as I go along. But it was something to do with they wanted to come up with their own version of Marple, because they wanted to take the books and completely change them, and Christie wouldn't let them. She had quite strong sort of creative control, and so they came up with their own version. But thank goodness they did, because what a wonderful creation to.
I think both of those stories prove that readers very, very much want to see mature women in the lead. I experienced this with my last novel. My main character is 54, so not elderly by any stretch, but definitely mature, has been married for decades, has a lot of children, and I cannot count the number of readers that have come up to me and said, thank you so much. I wanted to see myself on the page. I wanted to see a mature woman get to be the hero, get to solve the murder, get to be madly in love.
Yeah.
And I don't think that part of readership has ever changed.
No.
My question, though, with your take on Marple, 2 questions really. Are you making it contemporary or back?
No, I'm not allowed.
Oh, okay.
No. What was really
Are you?
flattering?
Please tell me you're keeping the pink shawl.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And the knitting, obviously.
Yes.
And actually, Mrs. Bantry's going to be in it as well. Dolly Bantry's in it. There's a little bit of a sort of Thelma and Louise thing going on, which has been great fun to play with. No, it's set in the 50s, which has been a really kind of fun period to play with for various reasons. I'm very much like in the middle of writing it, so I feel like I'm like, how much can I actually say about it? But no, what was really flattering is the Christie estate. So it's actually her great grandson who runs it. So it's very much in the family, which is nice. He said, we totally want your take on Marple. You know, he was like, don't feel you have to do a paint by numbers, exactly how Christie would have written it. He was like, we want, you do it in your way. So, I also want to sort of stay true to the soul of the books. But there are certain things you can't do. So you obviously can't kill off Marple. You can't introduce Poirot. You can't introduce a love interest for Marple. In fact, I can't kill off any kind of series-long characters. And couldn't set it in the modern day. I don't think I need to. Because I think I can say things about 2025 while setting it in an earlier era. I mean, there's a lot happening at the moment, not to get political, but there's a lot happening at the moment that feels like it's all happened before. We're like, why are we not learning the lessons of the past? But, so it's sort of been fun to play with some of that.
As somebody who kind of writes more by the seat of your pants, have you found those handful of constraints to free you or more burdensome? I find that the more constraints I have in a historical time frame, actually, the better my imagination works.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I found them kind of freeing. I don't need to kill off Marple. I don't need her to have a love interest. I don't need her to be the murderer. Although, I think she'd make a great murderer. There's this whole dark Marple theory, if you're interested, go and Google it. It's this whole thing that she almost makes the murders happen, because why do they always happen and she's there? And, anyway, fascinating. No, I find it liberating in a way, because there's also so much to play with as it is. I have so much freedom in this world. And actually, having written these historical novels at the beginning of my career, that was maybe the one thing that I sort of missed about writing the contemporaries, was doing that kind of really geeky historical research. Probably why I brought so much of the sort of folklore into the Midnight Feast. That's just brilliant. I'm really, really enjoying that too.
So you have mentioned many times that you love Daphne du Maurier and Thomas Hardy and folk horror films like Midsummer that you've mentioned. Who or what is inspiring you right now? And are there hints of those influences in your upcoming Marple book, and also whichever book it is that you will write next on your own, or of your own?
Oh my goodness, great question. So yes, absolutely. So this book's set in the 50s. It's set, I don't know if I haven't talked about it that much in terms of where it's actually setting, but Marple is travelling a little bit. She only gets to travel twice in the books. She was meant to go to the Nile, so Death on the Nile was originally meant for Marple, and Christie changed it at the last moment. And I also felt that Christie does the sort of the English village thing so well that there wasn't anything I could add to that. So she is traveling. I don't think I've said this before. She's traveling to the mountains. And what's fun about that is there were so many books written in the 50s by men, about men, for men, that were these sort of post-war thrillers. And the women in them are so cardboard cutout. They are like kind of window dressing or the femme fatale or the, whatever. I mean, some of these books are great reads. Apart from that, there's a writer called Hammond Innes. I don't know if anyone's read. There's a book called The Lonely Skier that he wrote. There are obviously all the Flemings. There are writers like Eric Ambler, brilliant thriller writer. But what I want to do is almost have this book sort of in conversation with those other books that were written at the time that were very much about men, except I'm situating kind of women at the heart of my story.
So your books have sold millions of copies. They've been adapted for TV. Yet you have said that writing is about chasing the thrill of a story. What is a moment in your career, maybe with The Midnight Feast or another book, where you felt that thrill of the chase most acutely?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I mean, for me, there's not one particular moment. It's that feeling of, it happens several times across the writing process where my real happy place is me. I can't work at my desk, until I get to the edit because that feels too much like work. It has to feel like play. I go to a coffee shop with my notebook. I write like freehand, first of all. It's just kind of messing around. And for me, the kind of real thrill and joy of writing comes in those moments. There are moments where you're thinking, I can't think what I want to write, and I'm going to order another coffee, and hopefully that'll help, and I'm going to sit here and twiddle my thumbs a bit. But it's those moments where you're into the writing process, and it's similar to when you're reading, actually, and you've kind of sublimated yourself. You're sort of not aware of yourself as a person writing the book any longer. You are in the story, and it's just taking you where it wants to go. And those are the moments I live for as a reader as well, when you forget who you are. You are so, your heart's pounding because something kind of thrilling's happening on the page. You're forgetting that you're just sitting in an armchair at home with a cup of tea, and it's the same for me as a writer, that I live for that. I chase that thrill throughout the book.
One of my writer friends insists that her characters come to her fully formed, that it's almost like a movie playing in her head, and that she can close her eyes and she just writes what they do, that they talk to her even. My characters are all mute. Nobody talks to me, and I never see anybody. When I close my eyes, I see the back of my eyelids. What about you? Do you hear them? I know we don't want to talk about voices in our head. I'm not talking about that. But do your characters speak to you? Do you see them?
Some of them, yes, from the outset. Others will take the whole first, second, third draft to kind of come to me fully. So with this book, Francesca came to me fully formed. Eddie came to me pretty much who he is. Owen, another character, he took a little bit longer to coax out. And I think that makes sense because actually he's keeping a lot of secrets from those around him. He's also keeping secrets from himself. So he's not sort of forthcoming with anything. And so I sort of had to really coax him out. I mean, there was another character in this who I knew she had a reason for being there. But I didn't know until about the third draft what it was. I had her there, if it were like a painting, she was just left as a kind of sketch at the corner of the painting. And then suddenly I realized, oh no, that's why. It depends on the character, really.
I'm convinced the subconscious knows. I'm convinced that somewhere out there this story is done, that it exists. The most woo-woo that I get is, I believe that the story exists out there. And so sometimes I will just say, okay, God, remind me how I did it, because I'm lost.
Sometimes I feel like it almost feels more like a kind of archaeology than like you're building something.
You're excavating.
You're excavating, and sometimes you're just there with your little brush and nothing's coming. And then other times you're like, that's a whole dinosaur skeleton,
Yes.
It's just, so there we go. That's my metaphor.
We are about to take questions from you, and when we do, we ask that you wait until the microphone is handed to you because we are recording, and even if you talk very loud, the microphone will not pick it up. But before I open it up, what is one thing that you hope readers will take away from the Midnight Feast?
Oh, I really want you to want to spend time in this world. So I want you to want to be at this hotel, to kind of luxuriate in it, and the roll top baths and the lovely cocktails and a beautiful setting, and have a great time there until you want to run 100 miles in the other direction and never look back.
So, who has a question for Lucy?
When you're in your coffee shops, do you ever look at the people around you and take notes on them, and all of a sudden you realize that's my character or that's somebody in my book?
I mean, not consciously. And obviously I have this lovely disclaimer at the beginning of the book that says not based on any real people, but it's definitely inspiring being surrounded by life. You sit in any given coffee shop and you'll get like a real slice of life coming in through the door. Even in the countryside where I live, there's like everyone, popping in. And you hear snippets of conversation that can be very inspiring, especially when you're like, you have got a bit of writer's block and you're kind of doing anything but look at the page because you don't know what to write. You sort of end up sort of listening to things around you. I did once hear a phrase, because I love to kind of move it around as well and work in different places to keep it fresh. And when we were in London, I was working in quite a kind of posh bit of London, and I heard this woman say, "I just don't know why anyone would fly economy with children." And I was like, oh my God, that is going straight into the book. I'm sorry, random lady, but that is going fully formed into that. And that ended up in the guest list. So yeah, you've always got to have your little notebook, I think, definitely. Thank you.
What are you currently reading?
Oh, so I have just finished The Plot by Jean Correlitz. I think I've pronounced that right. Has anyone read it? Oh, it's amazing. It's so good. It's really, it's like a book within a book, which I think is so clever. It's very sort of Ripley-esque, if you like, sort of Highsmith vibes. Beautifully written and kind of really real roller coaster ride of a book. And actually, because I love that so much and I then had sort of a real hangover from it, I've started reading the sequel to that, which is called The Sequel. And that's great. But I'm also, alongside that, I'm reading, which also kind of scratches that kind of really clever book within a book itch, The Marble Hall Murders by Anthony Horowitz. Has anyone read that series? They are, it makes my brain hurt thinking about how he came up with the structure for them, because again, there's a book within a book. There are two mysteries to be solved, but it's done so sort of effortlessly, it feels like, for the reader. Really great books.
Kind of on the topic of what you're reading, when you are drafting a novel, do you find that you enjoy reading within that genre, or does it like totally psych you out to read contemporaries? Yeah,
really great question. Oh no, I could never say I'm not going to read. I read kind of everything. That's sort of my background. As a reader, as a kind of reader for fun, as a professional reader, I would read really widely across genres. So it's just whatever's like scratching that itch at the time. I do get these weird sort of. So I love reading on recommendation, and then I get these weird sort of obsessions where, I'll read like the Jean Correlitz, and then I'll read everything she's ever written. So it's more like that. I try not to think too much in terms of how it will affect my own writing, because I think if you read kind of widely enough and voraciously enough, you're still going to keep your own distinct voice. I think you're just going to have, hopefully, this sort of internalized sense of great structure and plot and character and what makes things work.
Hi. What do you think keeps people interested in a mystery? And you talk about worlds and characters, but like, what do you know that makes people say, I got to keep turning the page? What is that secret?
Oh, really great question. And I think about this a lot because I'm like, I want to keep you interested. So what is it? I think, for me, I'm endlessly curious about people. I'm endlessly nosy about people and their weirdness and the secrets they might be keeping. So I'm kind of constantly asking the reader what do you think this person might be keeping from you or from themselves or whatever. I think that's part of it. I think that's why, something like The White Lotus is so fascinating, and like all the kind of fan theories and things. It's like, who are these people and what are they doing to each other, and what are the secrets that we haven't yet had revealed? I think a lot of it, I mean, Lee Child said this brilliant thing, which was, it's about asking a question at the beginning and then refusing to answer it for basically the length of the whole book. And I think a lot of that, I think a lot of it is that, like, to keep you guessing. The thing that I have to sort of work out in the editing process is my instinct is to keep all the cards really close to my chest and then, like, just let you know in, like, the very last scene of the book. And actually, for me, it's like pacing that out a little bit more and sort of giving you a little bit more earlier on as the reader. So I think it's, for me, it's curiosity. It's just sort of curiosity about what's going on with those characters and their secrets, and the pacing. And then on, like, a really sort of, like, much more kind of boring way, I really think about scene length. So I think if it gets longer than 2,000 words, I feel a bit anxious, a bit sort of, not anxious, but itchy, because I'm like, I think that's the point where you can really put the book down as a reader, and I want you to want to go to the next scene. And it's much easier if you've kind of changed scenes. It's much easier to keep reading, I think. So that's the other thing. Yes, thanks. Are you writing?
Yeah.
Exciting. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi.
So you talked at the very beginning about the very specific circumstance that got you to the plot of The Midnight Feast, but do you have any funny or unconventional things that got you to plots of other books or certain characters?
Oh my goodness, great question. So the hunting party came about. I wasn't planning to write a kind of murder mystery, a contemporary thriller, any of that. I'm not sure it's like a funny story, but my poor husband, we were a boyfriend at the time. We were going for a holiday, like in the Scottish Highlands, and we were driving up there. It wasn't nearly as sort of swanky as in the book, but we'd rented this little cottage on this sort of big sort of old Scottish estate. And I was reading the instructions, and they said, in the event of very heavy snowfall, you may find you're unable to leave the estate and its surrounds. And I thought, ooh, that's kind of creepy. And I looked up, and the first flakes of snow started to fall on the windscreen. I was like, ooh. And then we got there, and then we were like, oh, because we were sort of in our late 20s at the time, and New Year was this thing. We'd get a group of old friends together. They were actually more his friends that we'd sort of do that New Year thing with than mine. So I felt less awful, like sort of skewering them in the book. No, it's definitely not them. They're really nice people. Oh my goodness, it's being recorded. But so I thought, we thought, oh, this would be a great place to get a group of old friends for New Year. And then the two things converged in this sort of evil way into the idea for that book. And then my poor husband, I basically made him spend his holiday trudging around in the snow, working out like, oh, they could find a body there, or this could happen there, or like, what about if we used, so yes, there we go.
I'll preface this with, I'm not a writer, but I'm assuming like a writer's rut is a thing. What do you do if you like hit like a snag in your ideas to kind of get out of your own head, whether it's read someone else's book or go for a walk, something like that?
I mean, both of those things. Basically anything other than writing. Go for a walk. There's something about doing something like kinetic that's not right. So like going for a walk, like cooking, I find you like literally. I had the idea for the big twist in the middle of the Paris apartment, literally when I was making scones at home. Like I was like kneading the dough. I don't know if that was something to do with it. Watching a film. I am such a huge cinephile. I'll watch. I watch everything. And I think, again, that's a great way, the storytelling in film, I think you can learn a lot from that as a writer. So all of those things, driving, like having a bath. Yeah.
I'm curious if book tours in the States are different than book tours back home for you or in different places.
Oh my goodness, really good question. I don't think I've been asked that before. I definitely feel like I have a bigger audience in the States. It's amazing. Actually, I was saying backstage that one of the first book events I ever did, when I was writing the historicals, I was saying I'd love to do an event, and they were like, And they were obviously like, we can't tell her that no one will come. And then finally I got this event and I was so excited, and it was in London. And obviously in London, like people have like here, people have lots of different demands on their time. So thank you all for being here. And 7 people came, and one of them was my then boyfriend, one was my best friend and her friend, and my editor, and the publicist, and then 2 members of the public who were like really confused about how all these people seemed to be very kind of pally. So yeah, we'll never forget that. But no, I mean, the really fun thing about doing the US tour is meeting people in different places. Like, I mean, I'm, as you can hopefully tell, I'm so inspired by travel and visiting different parts of the world. And so for me, this is just like, oh, it's the dream. So I try and get sort of out and about as much as possible. It's not always as easy when you've just got like a really quick layover somewhere, but I wanted to feel like a road trip as well.
Have you ever had a fan come up to you, whether in public or when you're doing one of your book signings, and tell you a theory of theirs of what they think was going to happen or maybe should have happened, and you kind of think, oh, crap, I probably should have done it that way?
Oh my goodness, that's such a good question. No one has ever said that to me. They've probably been too kind, like you should have done it this way. No, I've had people say, very flatteringly, like, oh, I didn't realize it was going to be this or it's going to be that. No, great question. I'm going to be thinking about that one for a while though. But I do think as a writer, you feel like your job's never really done. If I were doing a reading tonight, I would have been back there with my pen, like scribbling things out, moving words around, wishing I hadn't written a particular sentence. And I think, I've heard amazing anecdotes about weddings since writing the guest list. And I'm like, oh, I wish I could have got that in there. That's so good. Those people behaved so badly. Like, that would have been dynamite. So there we go. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, Lucy, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you for having us. And thank you.